Good morning. Welcome to the Point. This past week, I sat down with Governor Rick Snyder to talk about 2017 and look ahead to next year. During our conversation, we also talked about the groundwater contamination here in Kent County. Doesn't seem possible it's the end of another year, and Governor, I want to talk a little bit about some of what you feel like you've achieved, but I also want to talk about what's still on your plate, because you've still got another year, and I know you told me some time ago that you felt a sense of urgency about getting some things done, and I assume that that's amplified now coming to the last 12 months. But first, this year, what got done on the state level that you think will have positive impact going forward?
Yeah, there are a number of things, Rick. On the economic side, what we're doing in mobility is really exciting. The American Center for Mobility, but promoting Michigan. We're the world's leader in mobility, and we're seeing a great response from around the world to come here, partner here. That's exciting. On the talent side, which is a key priority that ties right into that, the Career Pathways Alliance got launched, which is a great partnership with the state school superintendent and us working together to get more people, and the private sector all to come together to get more people in these great well-paying careers that are out there. On infrastructure, we started the regional infrastructure asset allocation model about how they can do better planning for asset investments and stuff, and that's been good. So, and then finally, retirement reform was a big deal. On the legislative side, we both did state reforms and local reforms. So that's something that's going to make a difference for the next 20 or 30 years. These are all good things.
Those retirement reforms had been high on your priority list too, because they were, in some cases, unfunded monies owed to people who had worked townships, cities, wherever. And at some point, if those cities default on those become the problem of the state.
That's not 100% clear. They're a problem though, and you don't want to see that happen in terms of them being defaulted. So what we did is we proposed some good legislation that got passed that really deals with transparency and reporting and better accountability. We proposed some things that went even farther than that, but I'm pleased with what we've gotten done. That's a major step forward, and if more needs to be done, it can be followed up.
Talk to me about infrastructure, because what you're doing now is doing kind of an assessment, but there's a big price tag that's looming out there. Perhaps not in your administration, but certainly whomever occupies this office, if they're a two-term governor, they're going to have to deal with some of that, and the investment rate that you're going to have to keep up with is pretty startling, because it's not just here or there, it's almost everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's a national issue. But we made a good start with our transportation package. People tend to forget that. We've got $1.2 billion sort of ramping in to help with public transportation, roads, bridges, all those kind of issues, which is important. But we need to do more in water and sewer, broadband, these other areas of infrastructure, energy. I think that our energy legislation will help move us forward on that area. So there's not one answer, but there's pieces. Several of the pieces are in place. The good part is we have a broader strategy, though, to do it. And it's not just about spending money, it's about saving money. I mentioned the asset program we have going, which is about integrated asset management. And we're partnering between the Grand Rapids region and the Metro Detroit region to say how you can do these projects together, instead of simply saying, let's do one-off projects, instead of let's do road and sewer together.
Yeah, if you have to tear the road up already, it makes sense that when you put it back.
Or 3 or 4 different kinds of infrastructure.
Talk about some of the things that I know you wanted to get done, didn't happen. Auto no fault was one of those things that we had talked about rather extensively, and it's remarkable to think that people might be paying $500 a month in some cases on the east side of the state, particularly when it comes to insurance. But the elusive grand deal didn't come together this year.
No, we still need to work that. And I think we need to look at incremental reforms. I'm not sure you're going to get a massive comprehensive package versus saying what are some key pieces that would make things even better, and then keep working the issue. So I'm very open to saying how do we continue that process. Other things that we have in the pipeline we didn't get fully done. I mentioned the Career Pathways Alliance. We have some things to the merit curriculum, some other ideas to help encourage more talent, to get the right training to be successful in these great well-paying careers. So I'm working on a Marshall Plan for talent to be with the budget. Opioid abuse. That's a crisis in our state. It got through one chamber, a number of bills. We have more work to finish up, hopefully after the first of the year on that. And then in education, I'd like to see A to F in terms of a real scorecard for our schools put in place. Because again, our kids, we need to do better, and I want to support our teachers and administrators in having the right tools.
One of the economic development groups on our side of the state was looking back over this past year and looking ahead, and one of the real headwinds, they called it, is just that, is talent. So whether it's K through 12 education or education for those jobs that you talk about when it comes to skilled trades, that is a real issue that impacts people right now. In fact, they estimate in their service area there are only about 20,000 people that are available to hire, unless you hire them from another business. So on one hand, low unemployment is good, but it also creates challenges if we don't have the skilled work set.
Yeah, there's two or three pieces. It's a different problem to have, but it's a problem that's a problem we should take on and be excited about solving, because one, here's an opportunity to get people that might not have had the opportunities to get a well-paying job, to get into the workforce. Again, to bring people into our state, to keep our young people here. So these can be positive things, but we need to have better mechanisms to have young people and parents and those people looking for that next career understand where these opportunities are and what skills are required to get there. So there's an issue about education. There's an issue about delivering that. So how do we work with our educational institutions to make sure they're doing it, particularly our community colleges, our intermediate school districts? A lot of it is going to shift more to certificates versus just degrees. Like in computer science, information technology, you can get a one-year certificate that can lead to a $50,000 plus job. Let's do more of those. And so there's a big piece there. And then getting our private sector people to get more active explaining these things. So it needs to be much more of a public-private partnership rather than just saying it's the education silo in the private sector.
Let's talk about mobility a little bit, because it plays right in. Those jobs that are going to be developed here are going to be high-skilled jobs. You're going to have to know what's going on. You and I had the opportunity to go over to M-City and tour it together. It was fascinating just to look at what they're doing, but now you've expanded with the American Center for Mobility. Right. How much of that plays into what you talked about when you were running for governor? Because you kept talking about the boom and bust cycles that we have, largely because of the auto industry in some cases. Does this help secure a more fluid transition as we move from one type of big manufacturing to the next, which will be the mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, how did we have the lost decade? Is we ignored the rest of the world in Michigan. We were too successful. We just said we had a good thing, let's keep it going. So we ignored the rest of the world changed, and we ended up at the bottom. So we're being smarter now to say we need to lead the target. Instead of just saying we've got a good economy today, where's the economy going to be in 5, 10, 20, 50 years? And that's what mobility is all about. So we're the world's leader in leading where the future economy is going. We need to keep that up. So that's where I'd emphasize to people, don't get complacent nor content with what we've gotten done. Be excited by it, but grab those future opportunities and go for it.
How competitive is that? Because I know California would like to have more of the mobility market. I suspect Texas would like to have more of it. So how difficult is it to make sure that Michigan is on the forefront of that? I mean, we do have a little bit of a leg up because we've got a lot of R&D here, right?
Yeah, we are the world's leader. We lead in R&D by far in terms of the number of patents and the talent pool, the engineering talent you need. But the other thing is I'm not viewing this as a versus thing, because that's how you get into those troubles. So I'm not doing Michigan versus Silicon Valley. My view is we're the world's leader, so let's partner with everyone we can and be the best partner. Because if you're the world's leader and you partner better than anyone else, you're going to stay the world's leader. So it's not about pushing people away, but bringing them in to see the values that we can add to help them be better and at the same time keep us in front.
I want to talk to you about a couple of environmental things. It was recently that you put out as strongly a worded statement as I have seen for a while, talking about pipeline number 5 under the Straits of Mackinac. And it got my attention because of the language you used and the seriousness that you clearly put on that. So talk to me about that for a little bit, because in the coming year, obviously, you're going to be requiring some answers from Enbridge, the company that operates that pipeline. What do you think the prognosis is for that?
Guarded, but positive. This is one that we should never take for granted. We're in Michigan, and as governor of Michigan, the Great Lakes are absolutely critical to us. That's something that I believe is a special responsibility. It's not just part of your job title. I mean, it's got to be something you believe in with passion, and I do. And we need to lead the other states and the provinces in terms of being a spokesperson on these topics. And then you talk about the Enbridge situation with these pipelines. They weren't being straight with us. We didn't get the right information. They need to be straight with us. So we put a strong agreement in place to say that needs to take place. Long term, there needs to be a better solution than having these pipelines on the bottom of Lake Michigan. Let's solve these issues. So we said short term, 2 or 3 things. 1, you got to open up transparency and reporting to us. 2, let's look at what the options are seriously to say, can we tunnel underneath? Can we look at other things to replace that? Short term, can we also put a tunnel underneath the St. Clair River? People don't even recognize there's a pipeline laying there that could be just as scary as the one under Lake Michigan. That project can already move ahead. And then what about all the water crossings that are on land? To make sure we're on top of that, like the Kalamazoo River situation. Let's not see this happen again. Let's get on top of it. So I can say we're doing this with a great deal of interest and involvement to make sure we're following through.
Did I hear you say that ultimately you expect that pipeline to be gone? Is that what you said, looking for alternatives to get it out of there?
What I'd say, the pipeline itself, it could be replaced with something, such as tunneled underneath the lake bed.
One other environmental issue that we're dealing with in West Michigan and that you're dealing with on a statewide basis is PFAS or PFAS, which is a chemical that was used in, as best as I can tell, almost everything at a certain time when you and I were much younger.
Yeah.
And now it has gotten into water supplies in some places. It was used, I think, at military bases for foam. It was used in the manufacturing of shoes, as we know now, over in Kent County. Tell me a little bit about that task force that you set up, because I was up there first or second day that they were set up, and I mean, they've got like 14 sites in the state that they've got to keep an eye on, plus all of the information that we don't yet know.
No, we rallied a group of people to be on top of this, because it is a serious issue and a concern that we're still understanding more about, but we want to be proactive about communicating with our citizens. This has been a big problem in other states. This is a huge national issue. And I believe Michigan's being a leader. Creating this task force really helped give us that position. I just spent time last week talking to the EPA administrator about how we could partner with the federal government on their task force. This is something we need to take very seriously, because we don't even know the real standards. There isn't a standard. It's an advisory still. But it's a problem. It's a threat to our health. And it's happening in multiple places. What's going on in Kent County is one of the most serious in our state. And so hopefully we're being proactive about getting information out to people, not making it a panic situation, but let's take this in a very thoughtful, aggressive approach to saying, how do we walk through the steps to make sure we're doing the right things to make sure people are getting safe water?
You set up this task force in rather short order, and it's kind of, there isn't really a handbook to go along with it. I mean, this is something, kind of a new approach when it comes to this kind of an emergency or this kind of a situation.
Well, it's an emerging issue. And this is the issue that we're facing now. The challenge is I think we could find other issues in the future. I mean, that's just the problem we have, is because this was a chemical, as you said. It was most everywhere, and it wasn't treated as a toxic chemical back then. People could dispose of it different ways, and that was a mistake. How many other cases could that happen with other items?
One final thing, Governor, I want to talk to you about, and I don't want to run you out of your office before you need to go, and we'll have a lot of time to talk in this next year, but you're coming into the final 12 months of this 2-term experiment. You wanted to reinvent Michigan. You wanted to, as you said, not take credit or lay blame, but you wanted to get some action, some things done. What is it you want more than anything in this last 12 months, and what grade do you give yourself on the first 7 years?
Well, grades, it's not about me. But if you look, we have reinvented Michigan. Look at it. We're a top 10 state in the nation for economic growth, job creation, personal income increase. We're the #1 state in the Great Lakes states. We are net inbound migration of people with bachelor's degrees. We're leading the Great Lakes states. Our kids aren't leaving anymore. They're staying here. We're getting kids back. This is cool stuff. This is exciting stuff. But I want to run through the tape, so to speak, for this last year, because it's an honor being governor. I had a finite amount of time to do a job to make the people I care about better off. And so there's 12 months to do that, essentially, and I want to finish strong. And I want to create a foundation that whoever comes next doesn't have to look at the same set of problems I took over. They can look out the front. They don't need to look in the rearview mirror for all the big old rocks.
As you heard us discuss, the state has set up a task force to look into PFAS, but they've also come up with some money. Up next, 2 lawmakers talk about that to the point. Welcome back to the Point. State Representative Rob VerHeulen and State Representative Chris Afendoulis represent the part of Kent County that has been primarily impacted by PFAS, or the groundwater contamination that we've told you so much about here on 24-Hour News 8. Just after session wrapped up, I sat down to talk with both of them about the appropriation to help clean up that problem and where we go from here. How important is it, A, to reassure your constituents you're doing everything you can, and at the same time not overemphasize or unnecessarily worry them because you are unclear about the scope of it?
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right, and we're going to be unclear for a while, but of course our primary focus has been public health, and there's been an incredible partnership between the Kent County Health Department, the legislature, Representative Afendoulis and I, and Senator McGregor have been we do weekly conference calls with DHHS, DEQ. We include such individuals as Dr. Scheibler from the Rockford Public Schools, our local superintendents, supervisors for the townships, Rockford officials. So we're keeping everyone included. We've had a number of town halls. I think the last one we had about 1,000 people. So I think we're doing a good job of trying to strike that balance. We obviously have to be concerned about public health, but there's a lot of unknowns out there, and it's not unique to Michigan. It's in many states. The EPA is obviously engaged and involved, so it's something that we have to work through, and I would call it a down payment. I think we have to be deliberative, and we have to be science-based as we move forward. But having all units of government, the education authorities, is really helpful, because I think the communication has been very good. Kent County Health Department has a web page, DEQ, DHHS have web pages. Dr. Scheibler in the Rockford Public Schools has been sending emails to the residents in the Rockford School District, which includes Algoma Township, Plainfield Township, the City of Rockford, and so forth.
When you talk about one of the efforts that you can make, you have to test water. My son's school had a well, it's been tested, but it takes a while. If I understand this, DEQ wants to get equipment so they can do testing as well. But we heard Senator McGregor during the Appropriations Committee talk about there has to be an ability to recoup. For example, if the federal government has money that could pay for some of that testing equipment, we would expect to draw that down. You and I talked at one time about this before there was anything set in stone, and I don't know that it's set in stone now, but we talked about the fact that if you get testing equipment after the need is met in Michigan, perhaps that testing equipment could be used for surrounding states to speed up this process, because right now it takes so long. Is it your anticipation that that's what's going to happen?
Absolutely. There are very few private testing labs that are certified to do this kind of testing across the country, which has resulted in high fees for doing tests and great delays. So we feel very confident that by doing them here with a DEQ lab, we'll be able to reduce the cost, increase the speed on getting test results, and we think will be available to assist others. That's not our primary motivation, but if we can be an assist to other states, that will be helpful, and of course that will help us cover the cost of operating the laboratory.
When you become a state representative, there are a lot of things that are on your mind. You're interested in education, you're interested in regulatory reform, you're interested in any number of issues, but you probably don't immediately think of, I'm going to end up with a whole bunch of residents who may have contaminated well water, or I may end up with an entire community that has contaminated ground that's going to have remediation. How does this affect your constituents?
Well, I think you make a great point, because when I ran for office, began running for office almost 4 years ago, there are a number of things that came up in the last 3 years that you just don't know that you're going to be dealing with. So you have to be ready for that. You know, there's an uncertainty, obviously. Public health is our number one concern. The state is responsible for the public health. That's why we have our health departments by county, and we spend a lot of resources on that. But I want my constituents and our residents to rest assured we're going to make every effort we can to make sure that they're going to have clean water, and we're going to get to the bottom of all the facts and understand with scientific evidence what we need, where we need to be, what we need to do to provide that. So And I think as we move forward, I think we're going to continue to learn more about the issue, not only in Michigan, but nationally. And I hope that will help reassure people that, things hopefully will improve. But we've got a long road ahead of us, and we're going to have to see how things progress.
That's my last question to both of you. I'll let you answer it first, Representative Afendoulis. We know this isn't an issue that's going to be over at the end of this term, and it's not going to be over at a date certain because we don't yet know the scope of this issue. So as you talk to constituents, and when you talk to people across the state, because as you accurately point out, there are multiple sites in the state right now. Obviously we're focused on what's happening in West Michigan. How do you prepare people for the fact that whatever the scientific outcomes are, whatever the remediation is, whatever the fix for their well is, whatever the fix for their house is, whatever legal remedies there may be, are likely to be years, if not decades, in the future?
I think what we're going to try and do is make sure that we can move with the greatest speed to address the number one issue, which again is clean water. And that can be eventually hooking people up to a municipal water system. Plainfield Township has, just at its meeting last week, approved a pilot to start filtering the water with a new, putting it through a new carbon filter, which they believe will take out the PFAS from the water. And we also understand that the City of Ann Arbor system has this type of filtration. And so I think that's number one, and move as quickly as we can. And that may be, like you say, maybe years before we can get everyone hooked up to city water. And who pays for that and how that all transpires, well, that's, as you say, that could be some long-term aspects to that. But I think that's number one, and I think we will move as quickly as we can, especially with that in mind.
Yeah, I agree. The public health, short term, when we know that there's a problem with an individual resident, there are filters that will work effectively, and here in Kent County, a number of those have been installed. So I think we're taking the right approach. If you're a resident and your levels are the 70 per trillion or close to it, you're going to be concerned. Well, a filtration system will work for you. Long term, we're going to be dealing with this for years. People ask me, well, who's ultimately going to pay, and is there going to be federal resources? And I said, well, we're going to be sorting that out. There's going to be litigation. It's going to be a long, long time. But short term, we want to take care of our residents and take care of the problem, and then the rest of it we'll sort out. There's a huge science component. We just don't know. If you talk to MDs, they'll say, well, all of us have some of this in our bloodstream. So really, what is the health, at what levels, and how do we reduce those levels? Those are complex questions, and the answers aren't, you can't go to the internet or go to a book and say, well, this is what you do. And so we're going to have to work through that with the medical professionals, the scientists, the public policy, local governments, even neighborhood associations where they organize, and these are legitimate questions. We want to make sure we're getting the right people in front of those groups to give them as many facts as we can and assure them that their government is being as responsive as we can. But we also want to do it properly. We want to make sure we're basing our decisions on good data.
That appropriation of nearly $24 million will be headed to fight PFAS at all 14 sites in the state, including the ones right here in Kent County. And we're back with more To the Point. As we move through the holiday season, we'll continue to be here on Sunday morning. Next week, a candidate for Secretary of State and one for Attorney General. I hope you'll join us then. To the Point.